You wake up and you already feel it. It isn't pain, it isn't sickness. It's that strange heaviness that settles in before you even open your eyes, as if the day is already too heavy to carry before it has even begun. You lie there, you get up, you grab your coffee, you do everything right, and yet something inside you feels switched off. Have you ever wondered why, even after a full night's sleep, you still feel exhausted? Why you start your week with big plans and end it having done almost nothing you promised yourself? Why, deep down, there's a voice telling you that you could be more, but that voice only shows up when life feels urgent? This feeling has a name, and it's not laziness, it's not weakness. It is the consequence of living without an anchor. When a person lacks internal structure, any wind can move them. Any notification steals their attention. Any passing emotion dictates their choices. The day slips away, not because you wanted it to, but because you let it. In this video, you're going to discover something that will change the way you think about discipline, not as a burden, not as rigid control, but as the only path that actually leads to freedom. You'll understand why the greatest thinkers in history came close to this truth, but only one reached the very heart of it. And by the end, you will have a simple method, taking less than 5 minutes a day, that can start changing your life this very afternoon. But before we get there, I need to show you something you might never have seen before. A story. Something you may have lived through without even realizing it. His name was Daniel. Daniel lived in Columbus, Ohio. He was 32 years old, lived in a small third-floor walk-up, had a steady job in logistics, and a list of goals on his phone that he rewrote every New Year's Eve. On the outside, everything looked fine. On the inside, it was shifting sand. Daniel woke up every day feeling like he was running late. Not for a specific appointment, but late for his own life. As if the version of himself he was supposed to be had already left, and he was forever playing catch-up. He tried the gym, he lasted 3 weeks. He tried meditation, it lasted 4 days. He tried waking up early, read about successful people's routines, and bought a leather planner that he used for exactly 2 pages. It wasn't a lack of willpower, it was a lack of something deeper. He had the desire, but the desire only lasted until the first obstacle, until the first bad night's sleep, until the first day exhaustion arrived before the alarm did. And then, that one Thursday happened. Daniel was at a diner in Columbus, reeling from a job interview that hadn't gone well. He was staring at a glass of water when an older man sat down at the booth next to him. The man opened a worn-out book, ordered a black coffee, and sat in silence for a while. Then, without Daniel saying a word, the man turned to him and asked, "Have you ever seen an untended garden?" Daniel thought it was a strange question. He said he had. The man nodded. An untended garden doesn't die all at once. It withers, slowly, until the day you look at it and no longer recognize what you planted. He closed his book, left a tip on the table, and walked out. Daniel stared at his glass of water, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like that sentence was about him. Not about the garden. About him. He understood in that moment that there was a way out, that there was something to be done with the space life had given him. But he still didn't know what it was. He didn't know how to start. Daniel was about to find that answer. And maybe you will too. Jesus said something that, for centuries, people have read as religion. But when you read it slowly, you realize it is pure psychology. In Luke 16:10, he says, "Whoever is faithful in very little is also faithful in much." 8 words that carry a truth it took neuroscience 2,000 years to confirm. Faithfulness isn't about the much. It isn't about being grand. It isn't about being epic. It's about the tiny things, the repetition, the things no one sees. And what Jesus is saying isn't about a religious ritual. It's about internal structure. It's the idea that human beings are not built by impulses. We are built by practices, by what we do when we don't feel like doing it, by what we honor when no one is watching. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote in his personal journals, what we now call meditations, something very similar. He said that discipline isn't what you impose on the world, it's what you impose on yourself. Every day, without applause. Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychologist who survived the concentration camps, discovered that the people who endured the horror weren't necessarily the physically strongest. It was those who had an internal structure, a repeated purpose, even in the midst of a void. Both came close. Marcus Aurelius, through reason, Frankl, through survival. But neither went as far as Jesus did. Because Jesus didn't just say, do it. He said, be faithful. There's a massive difference between doing something out of discipline and being faithful to something out of love. Discipline born of fear breaks under pressure. Faithfulness born of love endures because it has roots. And here is the metaphor you need to keep with you. Think of that untended garden. An untended garden doesn't explode. It doesn't catch fire. It simply stops growing. The weeds move in, slowly, silently, until one day you look out and you no longer recognize what you planted. That is exactly what happens to a life without discipline. It isn't a disaster, it's erosion. It's the day that passes without a single conscious choice. It's the week that ends exactly like the one before. It's the year that vanishes without anything truly changing. An untended garden doesn't need an enemy to die. It only needs absence. And the same applies to you. Think of 3 concrete examples. First, have you ever put off a difficult conversation for weeks, only to find, when you finally had it, that it could have been solved in 10 minutes? That delay wasn't wisdom, it was abandoning the garden. Second, have you ever promised yourself you'd go to bed early but stayed on your phone until midnight? Not because you had to, but because the lack of structure left the hour empty, and the void was filled by whatever was closest. Third, have you ever had a great month of habits only for one bad day to undo everything? That's because your discipline was based on motivation, and motivation is the weather. It comes and goes. Faithfulness is the soil. It holds firm even when it doesn't rain. Jesus understood that human beings need right practices, not heroic impulses, and that the greatest garden in existence is the one you cultivate every day when no one is clapping. Here's the method Daniel found, and you can start using it today. It's called the Living Garden Method. There are 4 steps. Each takes less than 2 minutes. Together, they don't even add up to 10 minutes a day. But practiced with faithfulness, not perfection, they change a person's internal structure in weeks. Step 1, the morning intention. Before you pick up your phone, before your coffee, you ask yourself one single question. What will I honor today? Not a to-do list, one thing, the most important thing. It could be finishing that email you've been avoiding. It could be calling someone you need to talk to. It could simply be not complaining for 2 hours. Jesus was faithful in the small things. This step trains exactly that, focusing on the smallest possible commitment and treating it as sacred. Step 2, the moment of conscious pause. Once in the middle of the day, during lunch, between meetings in your car, you stop for 2 minutes and ask, am I tending to my garden or am I letting the weeds grow? No judgment, no guilt, just honest observation. This is the step most people skip, and that is exactly why erosion happens. Because the weeds grow when no one is looking. Step 3, the nightly anchor. Before you go to sleep, you write down, on paper, in an app, wherever you prefer, a response to this sentence. Today I was faithful to... Even if the day was chaotic, even if you failed at 10 other things, there's always at least one small thing where you were faithful. Identify it. Write it down. Celebrate it in silence. This isn't fluff. It's neurology. Your brain learns by what you repeat. When you train your eyes to see small faithfulness, you begin to create it more often. Step 4, the weekly garden review. Once a week, maybe Sunday night or Saturday morning, you spend 10 minutes looking over your nightly anchors and asking, what grew in my garden this week? What needs more attention? This isn't planning, it's gardening. You aren't creating a conquest plan. You're observing what is alive, what is withering, and what needs water. Every step of this method stems directly from what Jesus taught in Luke 16, faithful in the little things, every day, without needing applause, without needing a big break. Daniel started with step 1, just that, for 2 weeks. And it was enough for him to start feeling something he hadn't felt in years, the sensation that he was actually present in his own life. Remember the question from the beginning? Why, even after a good night's sleep, do you still feel exhausted? Why do you start the week with plans and end it without following through? Now you know, it wasn't weakness. It was absence. It was an untended garden. You let the weeds grow, not out of malice, not out of laziness, but because no one ever taught you the difference between motivation and faithfulness, between the impulse that lasts 3 weeks and the quiet practice that builds a life. An untended garden doesn't need an enemy to wither. It only needs absence, and you have spent too much time absent from yourself. But that ends today, because now you have 4 steps. Simple, concrete, less than 10 minutes a day, based on a truth that is 2,000 years old and has never been surpassed by any philosopher, any psychologist, or any school of thought in the world. Whoever is faithful in very little is also faithful in much. There are no shortcuts. There is no app that replaces faithfulness. There is no epic moment that compensates for the days you simply didn't show up. Transformation doesn't start when you feel like it. It starts when you show up, even when you don't. And I need to be honest with you. No one is going to do this for you. Not a video, not a message, not a method. Only you can decide to be the master of your garden. Only you can choose tomorrow morning, before you pick up your phone, to ask yourself, what will I honor today? That is the choice. And it is yours. Daniel went back to his apartment in Columbus that Thursday night with one sentence in his head, and he started with one step, just one, and the garden began to come back to life, slowly, silently, without anyone seeing it. But he saw it. You can too. Start today, with the smallest possible step, and be faithful to it tomorrow. Because discipline isn't a cage that traps you. It's the root that keeps you standing when the wind comes. In the comments below, write just one word. The word that represents what you felt watching this video. Just one. It could be strength, clarity, peace, restart, anything. Read the words of others. You'll realize you aren't alone on this walk. I'll see you in the next video.